Hello and welcome back to the Double XP podcast. It's your host, the Triforce Projekt, and today we're going to be talking about the fact of are retro games better than modern games, or what kind of the difference is between them. This episode, we're going to be breaking into kind of 5 different parts or 5 different segments, but it's all going to be focused around are retro games better than modern games? And I don't mean just in nostalgia. I mean like genuinely in gameplay design, fun, all around. Are retro or modern games better? So hopefully by the end of this episode, we'll have at least an idea of what that all kind of encompasses. Because if you think about it, on one hand, you have the classics like Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda. You got the original Pokemon games. All those sorts of, I mean, you can even go back to Tetris and Asteroids. You got like the old school games. But then on the other hand, you got some of the modern giants, we'll say, of like Elden Ring, Fortnite, even Call of Duty to an extent, those sorts of games. So, in this episode, we're going to break down a little bit about gameplay, the difficulty, creativity, and what actually keeps us coming back. So, let's hop right into the first segment, which is going to be kind of titled Simplicity versus Complexity. So, we're going to start with the biggest difference between the two retro and modern games, and that's simplicity. Obviously, with retro games, they had their limits on hardware, storage, graphics. Everything was very limited and restricted. Because of that, the developers had to really focus on gameplay as the main attraction, or what really drew people in and kept people playing and coming back to it. To talk about one of the games that we talked about in the beginning, Tetris, it has no story. It has no progression system other than the levels, really. No updates. But yet, people are still playing it to this day. I mean, even a few years back, well, maybe more than a few years back now, with the Nintendo Switch, they kind of reinvented Tetris with Tetris 99, where you competed against, it was basically a battle royale where you competed against 99 or 98 other players to do the best that you can. So they were still coming up with innovative ways to continue playing Tetris, but there's still tons of people that play Tetris to this day, the original Tetris or whatever version they can find of it for PC or their consoles. But why? Why was that so captivating for people? Why were so many ages, uh, or why did it capture so many different ages of people? And even to this day, I mean, Tetris is my mom's favorite game of all time. That and The Legend of Zelda. She loves both those games. So why does Tetris, or why do some of these older games capture audiences of new and old? And mainly, I believe it's because they instantly are understandable and they have endless replayability. Tetris is a pretty basic concept. Fill in the lines, take away the rows. Don't let it fill all the way up to the top, otherwise, you lose and you start over. The more lines you can take away at a time, the more points you get. And you just try and get your high score. That is basically Tetris in a nutshell. Um, it is extremely simple. It is very easy to grasp, and you can hop right in and play at any point, just about. And anyone can play it. And there is some strategy to it, but there's not much strategy other than fill in the lines. That is it. Now, if you compare that to some more modern games uh, that have things like tutorials where you spend 20 to 30 minutes usually in the beginning of the game, where it's teaching you all the mechanics. This is how you walk, this is how you run, here's crouch, here's how to reload your weapon if it's a shooter, or here is X, Y, or Z tasks, or how to do certain tasks in the game. And then obviously at points, if you're a PC gamer, you have to optimize and adjust your settings. Sometimes that can take upwards of 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how meticulous you want to be on what your settings are and what you have your specs of your computer at, of what it can handle. If you're playing something like an Elden Ring, or just some of these newer games that look immaculate, but you have a lower end PC, you really got to take the time to adjust. So you adjust your settings, your graphic settings, so your PC can actually run the game properly and smoothly, so it's easier to play and you don't lose frame rates and it's not choppy. And then that can be a whole detriment to your system overall. Not to mention the battle passes or the in-game currencies, all the different menus, all the different um, microtransactions that can come with new games. I'm looking at you, Star Wars Battlefront 2 from 2017. That's one of the most controversial. I mean, that game now, it's 2026. That game is almost 10 years old at this point. But when it first came out, it was ridden with microtransactions. Some people almost said to the point of it was unplayable. I never thought it was maybe that bad, but it was pretty aggressive. So modern games sometimes just feel like systems instead of just games, whereas retro games were much more of jump in and play. You know, put your game in the console, load it up on your PC, whatever, and hit start, and you are off and running into the game. Whereas modern games, you take a little more time up front to learn the systems, learn more about how the game operates and how the game processes itself before you can really get into the nitty gritty of what the game is. The next part of that, segment two or part two, is difficulty. So now we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that. A lot of retro games were extremely brutal, extremely tough. You look at games like Contra or Mega Man 2, they didn't hold your hand. They did not babysit you. They didn't teach you um, anything. They didn't give you any tips, any tricks. You had limited lives usually. I think Contra, you only got 2 or 3 lives, if that. Um, you had no checkpoints a lot of the time, so there was no getting to X spot in a level. And if you died, you go back only so far. It was, if you die, you either go back to the beginning of the level. Some games you even went back. It was permadeath. Went back to the start of the whole game. Had to do the whole thing over. So um, I believe the original Legend of Zelda is like that at points. If you take that into account compared to some newer games right now, I'm playing The Last of Us Part 1 on stream. I've died quite a few times. If you're watching that stream, you've seen me die a lot. There's a lot of checkpoints in that game. There's a lot of auto saving. Um, Also, old games didn't have tutorials. Uh, so you either persevered, pushed through, and eventually got better. You learned how the mechanics worked. You learned the kind of ins and outs of the levels and the enemies or whatever, or you stopped playing. You gave up. You quit. Um, Modern games usually are much more forgiving. Now you have some games, some modern games, that aren't very forgiving. You can look at maybe the Dark Souls games or the Souls-like games, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring. Elden Ring's a little more forgiving, but you can look at those other ones and they're a little less forgiving. But for the most part, modern games are much more forgiving. They got the autosaves, they have the checkpoints. You can even adjust the difficulty settings on a lot of games, depending on how you play. So if you're someone like the new Tomb Raider reboots that started in 2013, I believe, you could select a bunch of different settings. Even on, like I mentioned, The Last of Us Part 1, there are different difficulty settings. Uh, and the developers have designed that to make it more accessible for more people. So if you're someone who doesn't really like to do combat in games or isn't very good at combat, you can turn down some of these more action style games to an easier setting and make it more enjoyable for you. So the combat's a lot easier. Maybe you have less enemies. Maybe they take less damage, so it's easier to finish them off. There's a multitude of different things that can change that. So um, that is kind of the progression or the evolution of the difficulty systems over time with going from retro games to the more modern games. Now, does that mean modern games are worse because they're easier? And I don't believe that's the case. That's not necessarily the case. They're built differently than retro games. Retro games or games that originally came out, even like Super Mario. Like you had Super Mario, you get a little newer like Earthworm Jim on I think the Sega Genesis, if I remember correctly. They were built around challenge. They were challenge driven, whereas modern games now are built to be accessible to a wider range of people and have more of an experience driven aspect to them instead of challenge only. Now, again, like I mentioned, you can still have your challenge driven games like your Elden Rings. What are some other ones? I'm drawing a blank right now. But even with that difficulty system, you could play a game like Doom. Doom was relatively difficult and kind of set the world for the open world, or sorry, not the open world, the first person shooter aspect or genre of gaming. But the original Doom was pretty difficult. The Doom reboot, I think that came out, was that the 20, was that also like 2013, 2015 ish? Doom and then Doom Eternal? I don't actually remember those dates. But with those, you have tons of different difficulty or a handful of different difficulties you can play on to make it as easy or as hard as you want. So modern games, I think, are tailored more to attract a broader general audience of people. But the real question, or at least what I would like to ask, is: do we remember games more when we struggle through them, or do we remember them more for their story? And I think that comes down to a personal view. Um, I know plenty of people that really enjoy, like, we'll use Elden Ring just because it's the newest one in the, well, other than Elden Ring Night Rain, but we'll use Elden Ring as the example. Tons of people love Elden Ring, and I have tons of friends. I've played it myself through the seamless co-op. I played through the whole story with a buddy of mine who is a huge Souls-like or Soulsborne fan. Um, he loves those games. He loves the challenge. He loves that enjoyment he gets of eventually beating through a boss after he's tried it multiple times, learned the patterns, and done the things. And I also had fun with that. There was a sense of reward in that. Same with kind of a lot of people who enjoy retro games have that similar feeling. But also, I know tons of people that love to experience the story of a well written game. Again, we're going to use The Last of Us. This is my first playthrough of it, but I've heard tons about it of people just really enjoying and really loving what the story is to it and not necessarily caring about the combat so much. So they bring the difficulty down and play it on more of almost like I don't want to say walking simulator because that's not what it is at all, but the combat is almost second to what the story is. So there's plenty of people that enjoy doing that as well. So realistically, I think it comes down to each individual person's preference and what you're looking for in your gaming experience. Next part is creativity and innovation. A lot of people love to say that retro games were more creative. Is that really the truth, though? Back in the day, developers had to be a little more creative because of their limitations with their hardware, their storage systems, all the things. We didn't have 3D modeling until the mid to late 90s, I think, is when we really got to see some 3D games. It was a lot of 2D, or everything before that was all 2D games. So you think like Mario Party, or not Mario Party, Super Mario Bros., the original Legend of Zelda. Um, they those were just two examples. You got like Mega Man, Castlevania. They're all 2D games, so you had much less to work with. It changes kind of the way you have to perceive things and the way you have to build your game when you don't have a 3D environment to work with. I mean, that was unheard of at the time for gaming. Obviously, 3D environments were real. We live in 3D. But to take Legend of Zelda, think about what that game was originally. It essentially invented the open world exploration with basically no guidance. You load into that game. I've never finished the original Legend of Zelda. I love the Legend of Zelda series. I mean, I think one of my last episodes, which I did years back now, because we had a hiatus on this podcast, but years back we kind of did a deep dive on the 30 or so Legend of Zelda games in the franchise. Um, but that first game basically invented the open world exploration. It drops you into a world basically with no guidance, and what you do is you have to kind of complete and find the 9 dungeons and beat the 9 bosses, excuse me, of those 9 dungeons, and save the princess. But you can do those in any order. As you're exploring the world, you can stumble upon any one of those 9 dungeons. Now, certain ones you need certain items from other ones to get into, but I remember playing one of the last times I played, I'm pretty sure I found dungeon 2 or 3 before I found the first one. Or maybe it was I found dungeon 3 or 4 after I had beat the first dungeon. But there's nothing stopping you from doing that. Now, you have a lot of that in um, the closest equivalent, I think, for modern games would be like Elden Ring or the Souls games in general, or at least those are the top ones that I can think of, where you have this open world and you can kind of run into whatever you want, whenever you want. Realistically, it's a little bit tougher to do. Obviously, really, in any open world game, you can do that. Skyrim, you can do that. Fallout, you can do that. But with modern games, you have a lot more systems in play where it is level based. I think of the newer Assassin's Creed games. I was just playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey on the Xbox a little while ago. I loaded it back up. Had the itching to get back into the story of Alexios and go through that. And that's an open world where you can go anywhere in the world and do just about anything, and you can beat your head against certain parts because you're super underleveled, or you can go and way overlevel yourself and then run and power through all the other content that you skipped. I mean, even with open world games now, for a lot of it, you have multitudes and multitudes of um, side quests that you can do. Where one of my buddies, he will go through, and most of the time when he plays any open world game, he spends 20 to 30 hours, depending on how long the game is, doing all of the side quests, or as many of the side quests as he can. And he very rarely starts out with the main quest, and he will do all the other things first, and then eventually, when he feels like he's done everything or he's ready to do the main quest, he will go back and do that. And usually, when he gets to that point, he is way over leveled for what the main quest is, so you just breeze through that until you kind of catch up towards the end, or however that works. But The Legend of Zelda kind of really introduced that to us with how their world system was built. Or we'll go into the Pokemon Red and Blue. Do you guys remember having to meet up with your friends and trade via a cable, plugging in your two Game Boys together, and then going to a Poke Center and trading? That was something that was unheard of at the time. And obviously, we didn't have the internet capabilities that we do now with Wi-Fi and all the things. But like that was so cool. I remember being a kid, and we would always try to get different versions of Pokemon, so then we could trade each other the Pokemon that were in those other versions and get them onto our games. Um, and it was just so fun, so neat. Just that whole like process of trying to find all the Pokemon, and then, like I said, meeting up with your friends, going to a Poke Center, plugging in that link cable, and getting to send, watching the little animation on your screen of it sending it across the cable, and you getting yours back, or like the one from your friend back. It was just so neat. It was something completely unheard of at the time. But again, modern games have innovated in a different way. Again, we were talking about the open worlds. They have massive open world games now. I mean, like I said, Odyssey is huge. You got Skyrim that's giant. GTA 5 is huge. You have all these games that are massive. And then you have the online multiplayer ecosystems that are also a whole nother realm. We have whole games that are only online games, your MMO games, like um, World of Warcraft. That was slipping my mind for a second. I mean, what other ones are there? There's a bunch of MMOs, and I don't play like any of them. The main one, the only other one that I can think of right now is old school RuneScape, which that was a whole revolutionary thing at the time too, because that's a free to play MMO, which a lot of MMOs are. And then you have the microtransactions or the things after that, or you have like for old school RuneScape, they have the membership status, so you can pay. I think it's up to like 15 or $20 a month now, and you get bonus content or extra content that you can do. Um, but then obviously now with again the internet and the widespread use of the internet, you have live updates and then you have evolving content. So that's like the battle passes, the DLCs that come out after games release, just all the extra like skins and different things that you can buy after the fact. You back in the day, games used to uh, once they released, that was it. They very rarely got patches or updates, just because it was too hard for companies to do that. And then even if they did, you couldn't really roll it out to customers that had previously bought the game. There's no way for them to get an update unless they bought the new cartridge or whatever. And then basically you're buying a game twice. So if you think about it, like think of games like Minecraft, that gave players the freedom that retro games really never could. You have so many different options that you can do with Minecraft, so many different things, so many different aspects of that game that you can do. You can build whatever you want. I mean, really, if you look into Minecraft, there's people that have built fully functioning computers on there within Minecraft, calculators. I believe I saw a thing where someone built a computer that played Doom, the original Doom. I don't know how that all worked, but it did it. I'm sure it's like mods and things, which that's a whole nother realm to get into, is the mod world of modern games, which is people that essentially like big game that I played a lot was or is 7 Days to Die. There's a whole modding community that they take what the creators of 7 Days to Die built, and then they themselves code and build almost whatever you want to put into the game. So there's different kind of story driven mods or thematical mods that you can add on to make the game a little different. There's one that I was playing about a year and a half ago called Rebirth that really kind of changed the concept of the game. It obviously kept the zombie survival part, but it also added in like cyborgs and robots and things like that, and it completely changed the game. There's 7 Days to Die isn't one of those games that really has a story, so there's quite a few mods that add in some lore and a whole story basically to go through and with its own missions and things and kind of objectives to complete. So that's a whole nother realm that just never really happened in retro gaming. Um, so realistically, creativity isn't gone. It's just evolved and changed over time. Retro games really were creative within limits, whereas modern games are creative with almost endless possibilities. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. And then the next part that we really see a lot of is the business side of things. And this is where things can get a little controversial. We kind of hit on some of the stuff, but modern gaming is heavily monetized. Like I mentioned, the battle passes, the skins, the DLCs, microtransactions. Almost every modern game that comes out has some aspect of these items that I just mentioned. You have tons of games. Let's see. This is an old Xbox 360 game that I got, but uh, Destiny, the original Destiny that came out. Um, Actually, I have the paper right here. We'll pull it up and show it. But it came with. I bought the Steelbook edition, so this was like the special edition. But it came with expansion passes, or this came with an expansion pass, so it came with 2 DLCs for the original Destiny. Um, and then you had uh, other add-ons that you could get, other DLCs, um, season passes, so like battle passes. Like Fortnite, I think still is running a battle pass that lasts usually like 8 or 10 weeks, and then it's like 10. I mean, it might have gone up now. Back when I played Fortnite, it used to be like $10 for the battle pass, and then if you bought the battle pass, you got the premium items from that battle pass as you got XP. So it give you like skins, weapon skins, some of their virtual currency, which is used in game. That's a whole other thing. You had to buy currency. You still have to do it in a lot of games, but you spend real money to buy virtual money for that game to spend in game on things. Uh, Kind of convoluted, if you ask me. The exchange rates get really weird a lot of times. I think games have gotten a little better about it because people have really kind of complained, but I remember back when you had to buy Microsoft points for the Xbox 360 store. $20, 20 real US dollars would get you like 1,500 Microsoft points, we'll say. I don't remember the exact rate, but it was like almost never did 1,500 points get you something. You almost always had to get 2 sets of Microsoft points. So most of the things would be like 2,000 Microsoft points. So you'd have to spend, and I think at first the $20 limit, that 1,500 Microsoft point was the lowest amount you could get. So if you wanted something that was 2,000 Microsoft points, you had to buy 3,000 worth, and then you had the other one sitting around for future, which is fine. It's not like they went away, but it was almost predatory in the way that they did it. Of you're not going to get enough points. It's trying to get you to spend more money. Um, and like I said, that kind of mid 2010s into 2020 ish is when that really was the worst, and it's gotten a little better now. You still have to spend money to do like to buy these battle passes. I know Fortnite has like these skin packs where you get a character skin and maybe a weapon skin and an emote and a couple other things, and they're like $20-$30. If you're gonna buy all those, I mean, Fortnite has hundreds of skins. That's a lot of money. One of the biggest things that stands out to me is The Sims 4. As of 2023, 2024, I think Sims 4 is now free to play, but they have over 115 DLCs, I think, between all of their expansion packs. That comes out to be like $1,100 if you were to buy it all at full retail price. Now, a lot of the times they have their items on sale and things, so you can get it a little cheaper, but it still comes out to be like if you were to buy it all full price, and if you bought The Sims 4 when it first came out, because it was not always free to play, so it was a $60 game, and then you bought expansion passes as you came, you could have spent upwards of, I want to say it was like $1,200 or $1,300 on that game, and they're still releasing more packs now. And that's not to mention the broken state that game has continuously been in for the 13 years or 12 years it's been out on the market. You're constantly paying more to get more the new things, but they don't necessarily always fix what is wrong with it. But that's a whole nother thing for actually a whole nother episode to talk about the state of modern gaming in that sense. But yeah, you look at games like Call of Duty Warzone, again, like I said, Fortnite, um, they essentially have built them to keep you playing and to keep you spending. It's kind of dangling that carrot in front of you of like, here's the new pack, here's the new skin, give us more money and you can have it. And that is kind of the consumerism side of things of what our society has come to, especially in the modern gaming society. But you look back at retro games, kind of like I mentioned, you bought the game, that was it. That was you got a whole game most of the time, a whole working game. They spent diligent hours, or they spent many hours diligently making sure the game worked for the most part. You got your few flukes of games that just didn't work very well. And I don't want to say flukes, but you got your games that just didn't work very well at points. That's very true. Um, but there was never any updates, or very rarely any updates. There was very rarely any extra purchases. There was no seasonal content that you had to worry about. And like I said, usually that came with no working games, but if there was aspects of games that were broken, that was that. You just got you paid full price for a game that was broken and they couldn't fix it, or they wouldn't fix it normally. And like I said previously, they couldn't really fix it. Because if you think about it, if they patched a game on the Sega Genesis or on the N64, just to bring it a little bit closer to our times, I mean, the N64, I believe, came out in like 93 or 95 or 97. So at this point, it's 30 years old. But they released them on cartridges. You couldn't update a cartridge. I mean, even for now, hold on. I have some old Atari 2600 games here. But this is what games used to be, these cartridges. You can kind of see in there's that computer chip. That is what actually the game was. If this game released and it didn't work right, you couldn't just download a patch for it. Systems didn't even. I mean, when the Atari 2600 came out, I think it was like 1987 or 86. Um, don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly when it was released, but the internet wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even around, so you couldn't send out a patch for a game. But that was the trade-off. Now we have all of these modern technologies where they can update games. I mean, 90%, 99% of games that come out now have a day one patch, which is just kind of wild, if you ask me. Where the game releases, you spend all the time downloading it, because now games are averaging 20 to 200, 250 gigabytes of storage to download. And on top of that, you have a day one patch that's usually 15 to 20 gigs or so, depending on the game, that you have to download as well. So to break that all down, modern games can improve over time, whereas retro games, they really only had one shot. You had to get it right the first time. Otherwise, it could really be a detriment and the end to your company overall if it became bad. I mean, we can. There's a few games in history that happened. Um, Most notably, I think it was for the NES or the SNES, the ET game, where it was reported that they found hundreds of them, thousands of them in landfills, just because the game was so bad and it didn't sell. And that brings us to the idea or the concept of nostalgia versus reality. So we got to talk about nostalgia in retro games, um, because a lot of people claim retro games are better. But to me, what I think a lot of people are meaning when they say retro gaming was better is retro gaming reminds us or reminds me of a better time. I know I've been talking about this with my friends quite a bit over the past few years now that we're all in our 30s and um, have a lot less time to game. I mean, we're all kind of building our families and building our lives outside of video games, of course. But we a lot of times we find that fondly look back on our teenage years of when we got to game for hours on end. We would spend a weekend at a buddy's house playing games from sunup to sundown for sometimes days on end. Not always. For the most part, some of our buddies or my friends in particular, we would do some other things, but there was a lot of gaming that got done. I remember fondly in my early teens, preteen age, no, probably early teens, being in my buddy's basement, jamming out to some DMX, playing Raw, or playing Time Splitters 2, playing some of these games, Borderlands, we played a ton of, and just like having very fond memories of that. Now, like, I mean, we still play games quite a bit, even now in our 30s, but it's a little different. It's a lot harder for us to get time to play. We all have jobs. We all work different schedules. I work in a warehouse. One of my buddies works from home, and then another one of my buddies works at a resort, so he does hospitality work. So he's working nights and weekends. So while my warehouse job, I work kind of a 9 to 5. My buddy who works from home also kind of works a 9 to 5. Um, but we can't always play with our other friend because he works, nights and weekends or things like that. So it just kind of changes over time. But uh, going back to like thinking about that nostalgia and looking back on things, I remember playing Game Boy Color under the blankets with the little plug-in light to show your screen before they had the backlit screens. Um, you're playing that in the wee hours of the night, turning the volume down on the side so you didn't wake up your parents, hiding um, things. I was lucky enough to have a TV and a console in my room when I was a kid, so I remember like late nights playing games and then hearing my parents or my mom come upstairs. So I'd quick turn off the TV and hide the controller under the blankets or under the pillow and lay down to make it seem like I was sleeping. But then you even get into like when we had to borrow games. Like I showed you the physical copy of um, the Destiny for Xbox 360. But I remember, I mean, actually, I still have a game here that's my buddy's. Let's see, where is it? He let me borrow this a few years back, and I still have it. But like, asking your friends to borrow games and being like, oh, like I really want to play this game, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I got it here. I just beat it. You got to try it. So, I mean, I still got Knights of the Old Republic for the original Xbox from one of my friends, and then just having to almost beat your head against challenges that you came up with. I grew up in an interesting era where we did have the internet, but it wasn't readily available all the time. I grew up in the era of dial up internet. So if your parents had phone calls to make, you couldn't be on the internet, and vice versa. And I grew up in the era of very minimal bandwidth. Now we're so lucky. I mean, I'm recording this right now on the internet. I could have my phone running something on the internet while my wife's out in the living room streaming something on TV or playing other games with her friends or whatever. You could have multiple devices connected to the internet and not even hardwired connected, because there is that era which I wasn't a huge part of because was not PC gaming at the time. I couldn't afford it. But who remembers LAN parties? I was actually just recording another podcast with some friends last night. They're a little older than me, and they were talking about the good old days with LAN parties where you would have to crack a door open or a window open outside because you had 8 or 10 guys together with their computers all hardwired together, and all of those systems running just made it so hot in the room because you had 10 computers running at once and all the TVs and the peripherals and things. So we've come such a long ways. I've seen some pictures of some old LAN parties from like the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. And then I even see like pictures or have like reminisce on the stuff that me and my friends did, the couch co-op games we used to play, or bringing our TVs together. It'd be 3, 4 of us hanging out at a buddy's house, and we'd all have TVs in their basement or wherever, and each console hooked up. Each of our own consoles hooked up to a TV, and we're all playing together. Those are things that you don't really recreate anymore. Now everything's done online. I mean, I can connect with someone halfway across the world right now and play a game of PUBG or play some Helldivers 2 or whatever, and you don't even have to see them. Which also, I mean, I have super fond memories of that too. My cousin and I played Call of Duty 4 with this guy from Arizona that we met. We were probably 14 and 12, 15 and 13 at the time, and he was an adult. And now some people now would be a little freaked out by that, but he was probably in his 20s or 30s at the time, and like never met him once, never actually knew his first name, just knew his Xbox handle, and we played Call of Duty with him, 3, 4 days a week for a good 2, 3 years, and became really good friends at the time. Now it's unfortunate we don't necessarily chat with him too much anymore, but there's tons of people that, I mean, you can go on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube Shorts, and I'm sure you can find videos of uh, where guys have come together, and girls too, but it's mainly guys, where it's been like, oh, we've been gaming buddies for 15 years, and now we're just meeting for the first time, or all these things. So it's really changed, and you can't really recreate that experience of what retro gaming did and like the LAN era did for gaming. In a way, to me, gaming has become so, it's a weird area because it's so connected. And like I said, you can be playing a game, playing online with someone halfway across the world, but it's also so disconnected because you never have that actual human interaction face to face in real life, or you can go without it. Obviously, you can have that still in game. There's still couch co-op games, or you can still do kind of a pseudo LAN. Well, you can still do a LAN party if you wanted, but it's so much different. But for the most part, if you hand someone a retro game today with no nostalgia, no context, or if you take and give kind of a teenager now or a preteen now the original Legend of Zelda or some of those original Pokemon games, they might not have that same feel, even with like Tetris. They might not have the same magic feel that we had when we were growing up playing them. So, to conclude, is retro gaming actually better? And here's what I came up with. I can't say if it is or isn't outright, but I think retro games were better at simplicity, immediate fun, and they had much better pure gameplay loops, where modern games are much better at depth, storytelling, accessibility, and ongoing content. So realistically, it's not that one's better than the other, just over time, gaming has evolved and they prioritize different things. So, with that, I want to hear what your thoughts are. Do you think retro gaming is better, or is it just the nostalgia that's really getting to us? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear some game suggestions of what I should be playing. Leave those thoughts and comments down in the comments. Um, and if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. Maybe subscribe. But yeah, maybe share this with a friend who still thinks that retro old school gaming is the best, or share it with someone who can't stand retro gaming. Maybe this will give them a little perspective on where we're coming from as well. And I hope to see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching. This is the Double XP podcast and your host, the Triforce Projekt, signing off.